Hey guys, I just wanted to give you guys a tutorial on how I edit my photos. This will be the photo that we're using today, the girls in their 4th of July dresses. This is the edited photo. Here's the original. As you can tell, it's a little bit darker, but that's okay. We're going to lighten things up, make it look good. So first of all, we're going to scroll up here. I'm using my Wacom tablet to edit today. Shot this on the Sony A7iii with the 85mm f1.8 lens, shot at 1,000th of a second and ISO 125 on this. I did have a circular polarizer lens on here, so we did have things a little bit darker than normal. But let's go ahead and get editing. So for this shot, I am going to probably make it just a tad warmer. Probably bump it up to 7100, maybe 73, somewhere in there, just to keep it a little bit warmer. I'm also going to boost the tint just a few notches, just to give them a little bit of color in here. I'm going to lighten this up as well, maybe around 60, 50 or 60, somewhere in there. And for the contrast, I'm just gonna, I really want to keep some of those darks and the lights separated. So maybe around 30-ish, 28, 30, somewhere around there. As for the highlights, you can see a lot of these highlights are really bright. So I'm going to lower those down, bring some back, maybe not that much. And so what we'll do here to defeat some of that brightness around the edges is I'm going to use a radial filter. I'm not sure why it's turning up green. Oh, it's on dehaze. So I'm going to set that to darken. That's going to darken everything in this mask filter area. You can actually click the show selected mask overlay and it shows you what all is being affected here. So I'm going to actually turn that down just a tiny bit, the feathering. Nope, not that much. Somewhere in there to just leave them a little bit of space. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit new, radial filter, lighten that up over Nolan. And I'm going to hit lighten. And this is actually lightening everything from the center outward. So we're going to go over here to invert. And that's going to focus everything on the inside of this circle here. I'm going to brighten it up just a little bit. And then what you can do is actually right click on this and hit duplicate. So I'm going to do that and drag that over for June. Just makes it a little bit easier than having to make a new one. Create that for her. And click done. So we kind of have a nice little lightening, and then darken everything else around here. So that'll kind of get us on a good track when we're trying to lighten and darken everything. So as for the shadows, I want to bring those down as well because we really want to just focus on them. So I'm going to bring those down to maybe 10 or 12, somewhere in there. Not quite that much, maybe 14. We'll leave it there. For the whites, now this is going to be everything that is white in here. I'm going to bring that down quite a bit, maybe let's go to 45-ish. And usually just leave the blacks alone because everything else is pretty dark as it is. Okay, texture, I'm going to raise that up to about 10 maybe. Clarity, about the same, maybe a little less. And then vibrance and saturation I like to bring up to about 8 to 10 is usually where I like to keep those. Gives it some nice color, but not too much. Okay. So now we're going to go down here a little bit farther and adjust our colors. As you can see, these colors are a little bit crazy right now, so we're gonna have to do something with these. So for hue saturation, we're going to take the yellows and turn those a little bit to the green. As you can see, some of the greenery around there is turning yellow, and we want those to stay a little bit more green, so maybe 22-ish. The greens we're going to This is going to sound weird, but we want these match. See, these look very, very bluish green over here, and these look very yellow over here. So we want these two to match color-wise. So we're going to bring the greens back to the yellow just a tad, maybe about 15. See, these greens over here are starting to look a little bit more yellow again, and so they're starting to match. Everything is starting to look a little bit more cohesive, and that's what we really want. Now, right after I do that, I'm going to go over here to the saturation for the greens, and I'm going to take that way down, because that color is really overpowering for this photo. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to be a little bit extreme and take those down to 70, 71, 72, somewhere in there. That might be a little bit extreme for your taste, but I think it'll look good in the long run. We're going to bring the yellows up just a tad. This is a golden hour photo, and we want to keep it looking that way. And the blues, actually I want to bump those up just a tad. Keep some of that red, white, and blue color going on in there. Okay, now we're going to go down to luminance, and this affects the brightness and darkness of the photo as far as each individual color. So we're going to bring the yellows down just slightly to about 10 or 11. The greens we're going to bring way down because we really want to focus. Like I said, these colors are really heavy in this photo, and I want to bring those down so that we can focus on the girls and not the greenery. And then the aqua, this I think is going to be doing just a little bit in the greens as well. I'm going to bring that down as well. Okay, now that's giving us some good color and fairly decent light on them. I do want to bring the brightness down just a little bit, especially over here. So I'm going to bring that down and bring the highlights down as well. See, now we're getting somewhere that's a little bit more manageable. Otherwise, they're just going to be blown way out. I'm also going to bring the sharpness down slightly, and the texture and clarity. That will help just kind of soften things up all around the edges. We really are only focusing on our subjects here. We don't need the eye wandering all over the screen here. Okay, go ahead, close. And this is looking really good. Now, the final touches are going to be in the brush tool. So the brush tool, we've got darken selected up here. I'm going to go ahead and click lighten. And we're going to zoom in on them, maybe not that closely. We'll go back and I'll select 1/2, so half the image here. And we're just going to lightly brush this lightning brush in around their skin, because that's really what's going to help us pick them up out of the screen versus everything else that's super bright. The eye naturally gravitates towards the brightest thing in the picture. And so when the greenery and the foliage over on the side is 4 or 5 times brighter than the girls are, the eye is naturally going to gravitate towards those plants. And we really don't want that. So I'm going to color in over their skin. The dresses are actually pretty bright as it is already, so we really don't need to brighten those up too much. We're going to brighten this up. Okay, now we can go down here to Show Selected Overlay. And we can see in red, highlighted in red, is everything that we've colored. We've colored in some spots that we really don't want. Subtract this area, because we don't need her dress kind of glowing around the arm. That would be no bueno. And we don't need the plants glowing in the background. That would just look weird. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hit done and see what we've got. Oops. Fit. There we go. That looks good. That looks really good. I am going to make a couple of adjustments. I'm going to brighten this up just a little bit. Raise the shadows. I want to deselect this so I can actually see what's going on. Raise the levels here. Brighten this up just a tad. And I'm actually going to take the saturation down just slightly because they're getting a lot of, especially down here, a lot of redness from the sun being backlit. Okay, we're going to click done. See what that looks like. Okay, that looks good. That's looking really good. Because they are so orange, I'm going to create a new brush, color over their legs, just their legs. Brighten it up just a tad, and then here in a moment we're going to desaturate this because it just doesn't look natural. I know it is. It is natural, but it just doesn't look natural. We might even cool those down a little bit, the temperature. There we go. Boost the shadows. And that looks better. That looks better. Okay. I'm going to go back to fit. And now this looks really good. These girls are well lit. The foliage matches a little bit better color-wise, but it just everything over here is just kind of getting lost. So I really want to make that pop a little bit. We're going to go back to the brush tool, select the lighten feature effect, and we're just going to color in some of these plants back here. Now, when you look at this photo, you really want to notice, okay, what is actually light and what is dark. And we want to go in and lighten the things that are light and darken the things that are dark. That will help create a lot of contrast while looking natural. Now, we don't want to do everything. Everything over here on the right side of the screen is already light, so we don't need to lighten that. But just some of the tips of these plants are just being just barely kissed by the sun. Okay? So we can lighten those up just a tad. Okay, that's much better. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hit new. And in this big black hole over here, what I'm going to do is select the dehaze effect. And we're going to make this a little bit bigger. Ooh, not that big. There we go. And we're going to just slowly color over this area over here. Okay, now that's going to give a kind of a softer matte look. We don't want it to be too bright. We're going to actually cut that dehaze filter in half. And we can raise the shadows just a tad, just so we know that there's plant life back there. And lower the contrast. Actually bring that dehaze back a little bit. So that'll give it a little bit of a matte finish back there, but we don't want it to be too bright because we don't want to take away from this image. Right now, the eye, when you look at this photo, the eye is going to follow along some of these lines. It's going to find the brightest part of the image first, which is right around the girls, this halo effect around the girl's hair. The eye is going to follow this area, and then it's going to wander into some of this lighter area here. Now, this kind of curves back around, and you have this natural line right along where they are. So when the eye wanders around this photo, it's going to notice this orange up here, which is nice. It's a little bit of a nice juxtaposition color-wise. And then it's going to follow this natural line leading right back to the girl's eyes. So this will keep people in here. We don't want to keep this too bright or too dark because then you will get lost in this edge of the photo. And I think that's about it. Let me scroll down here, and I'm going to bump the vignette down just a tad. This might be overdone, but I really kind of like that look, the soft, dark edges look right there. And then also, one of the last things that I do is, depending on where this is going, most of the time it's going to be viewed online, so you can raise the sharpening on it. But also, a little known secret is use this masking tool down here under sharpen. Hit Command on There's Option. You hit Option or Alt on a PC. You hit Option on a Mac, and then you can raise that. And everything that is white is going to be sharpened with that sharpening tool. Everything that is black is not going to be sharpened. The important thing about that is we don't want to just blanket sharpen everything, because then we're going to sharpen everything that's over here, creating some noise, and it just gets looking too grungy and gritty. We really just want to focus on what the important parts of the photo are. So this gives us a good idea of, what is being sharpened. Everything in white will be sharpened just a tad, and then everything in black won't. So there we go. That is probably going to be the finished photo. I can take this into Photoshop and do some other things here and there. Things that I might do in Photoshop, if you're wanting to follow along, would be to smooth out their skin a little bit, maybe remove any of the mosquito bites or bumps or bruises that are on their skin. But this is going to be our final photo for now. I hope this helps. Let me know if you enjoyed this or if you have any further questions. Thanks.